Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
The music ends up transcending so many different things, and you know what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are listening, hit subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us the old 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads. X. Sorry, not Twitter. It's X now. I always forget. But we're at all these places at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness and come and pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one. It is a fresh one. It's a recent one. We are talking about, we're talking about the iconic Bob Marley, because the movie Bob Marley, One Love, is available on your favorite video on demand platforms now for our friends over at Paramount Pictures Canada. And it is the story of Bob Marley. But it's not the whole story. It's like sort of a portion of his life, which is, I really think, added to it, because it's how he really overcame a lot of adversity that he was facing at a really key point in his life, and ended up going and recording a bunch of music that ultimately changed the world. And it really highlighted his rise to fame, his impact culturally, his relationship with Rita, and sort of the dynamic there. And I really enjoyed this film. It's got some great performances in it from Kingsley Ben-Adir and Lashana Lynch as Bob and Rita. But it is directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green, who you might remember did the Williams sisters story, King Richard. He also did Monsters and Men, and he's done some other really good stuff. And we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with Reinaldo about just how he got the job and working on it, and just sort of the nature of the story as well, and the impact of telling Bob's story, which is a complex and difficult one, even at the best of times. But I think he does a great job here. And like I said, Bob Marley, One Love, is available on your favorite video on demand platforms right now, like Apple, Google, all those fun places. So go rent it or buy it. But first, check out our conversations with Ronaldo, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. Ronaldo, obviously, man, first off, just thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this. And congrats on the film, man. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the time too. So it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Now, I mean, I guess my first question is because I think the thing about it I really love the most is that it's not trying to tell all of Bob's story. That could have been exhausting and like really sort of overwhelming. It really was focusing on a specific time period. When you came aboard the project, was it always that focus, or was there sort of push for more?
There was definitely a push for more. And I get it. It's Bob and you want more. And so, part of the distillation process for me is boiling it down to like what is necessary to tell a good story, beginning, middle, and end. What can the story bear? And just trying to work backwards from there. And what section of Bob's life were we going to depict? There's so much to choose from, early childhood and early whalers, and just a lot to go through. And some of that stuff is really important, which is why we kept, certain flashbacks in order to support the A story in the film. But ultimately, it was trying to boil it down to what was the most impactful, part of Bob's life. What is the thing that he's most remembered for? And that felt like between 1976 and 1978 because of what had happened in Jamaica, the assassination attempt on his life. That would have changed anybody. That was probably the single most impactful moment, not only for us, but anybody that's ever heard Bob Marley's music, because he essentially went from being a national hero to a global superstar. When he went into exile, he created what we know now as Exodus. He also created Kaya during that time, but it was an outpouring of music. And before then, the world didn't know Bob Marley. He wasn't on T-shirts everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it just felt like, wait, so you get shot, you survive, then you leave your home country, and you create arguably the greatest album of the 20th century. Okay, I don't it's just like that's awesome. How did you do it? Like that felt like let's focus there. Everything else is noise. Everything else is we just can't fit it in. I'm not sure. Yes, we can dive into this relationship and that relationship, but too much to try to tackle. So it was about his musical genius. It was about his musical legacy. It was about his message and what he was trying to do. Was he a perfect person? No. Was he a human being? Yes. We tried to show some of those human qualities, and tried to focus on the things that we felt were most important for people to remember about Bob. Now, yes,
Sure,
I
totally,
hope
totally.
that people go in and discover more about him after the film.
Now, I mean, talk to me a little bit about just narrowing it down to Kingsley and Lashana, because I mean, obviously, Bill doing the character work and playing these like icons and Bob and Rita are one thing, but also I can imagine having access to the family while you're trying to do the work kind of adds an extra layer of pressure as well.
Yeah, it could, but I guess if that was my approach, I'd be dead because there was no movie without them.
Right.
So my approach was, I mean, I was hired by the Marleys, so I couldn't go in there and be closed off. It would have been detrimental to the filmmaking process and especially this film. This film was only going to happen with the family's approval, and that was with or without me. And so I came into that situation. Fortunately for me, I was coming off of the Williams family, where I had support, and I saw that as a huge asset in the film, in the making of King Richard. So for me, it was like huge asset, huge asset. And everything that's not an asset, I need to stay away from. But let me just take all the assets that I can. And, Ziggy Marley being on set every day, being able to help with the patois, the Bob specific patois, being able to just be a spiritual leader in a lot of ways. Having that like essence of Bob around was huge for the music of the film. He's a musician. We're making a film about music. So in those areas, he was really, really helpful. When it came to the musical aspects of the film, when it came to the language, those are areas that I could tap on, let's say, my fullback to help support me in those ways, if and block when I need him to block. And it was huge. Stephen Marley as a music supervisor on the film. What did we need to pre-record? What did we need to dub? What did we need to, just being able to ask those questions and get that nuance, get that characterization in the film specifically from the family was huge.
Now, I mean, was it re-recordings or did you have access to the original master tapes, especially when you're having Kingsley trying to recreate all this?
We had a lot of masters and but music is really complicated and music is really tricky. So we didn't have, access to all the songs. I think we had a 20-song deal with if I recall correctly or something like that, but it was an umbrella. It wasn't a prescribed list, but it was you can use 20 songs, which 20 songs, how can you do it? What can you do? The beautiful thing is that a lot of those early recordings they were tied in stereo, so his voice was tied to some of the other music, and it didn't sound that great. Like as much as it sounds like we were able to go in and re-record certain things on certain songs and bring a certain dimension to the songs that weren't there in the masters. And so some of that we were able to keep, some of that we were able to retain, and it's a mix of both. And so I think it was the best of both worlds where we got to we had access, we got to enhance some of the things that were unusable in a lot of ways.
No, I mean, I'm curious how vital was Ziggy and the entire family, particularly with, I guess, the performance scenes, because I mean, there was such physicality in how Bob performed. I mean, I can imagine that's a hard thing to sort of recreate just off videotape.
Yeah, I think I think it's a bit of like virtue of being close allows a feeling. You can't replicate Bob. It's like you watch him dancing and it's not choreographed.
Yeah.
He's moving to the spirit. So it's not like, hey, Kingsley, go in like step 1, 2, 4, 7. Like yeah, no, you can get some basic reggae steps, but you can't replicate that. So I think having the family around was, I think, I would wrap it around language because language is movement and patois is rhythmic. And so there's an inflection in the language. There's a style, there's a flavor to it. And I think by virtue of the language and how Bob spoke was also how he moved. And so I think language is the most important thing in our film. We essentially made a foreign language film. And so once we got our head around how we were going to do the language, I think it only helped the movement and the rest of the performance in the film.
Well, and I love how you bring up language because I mean, other thing that really stood out for me was just really Lashana's performance as well. Because it, like, especially as a fan, I already knew, but I mean, we really get to see the power dynamic between Bob and Rita and sort of really the nature of the relationship. How important was that to really sort of give clarity to, especially for maybe people coming into this for the first time, coming into
Oh,
Bob's world, as it were?
huge. And look, I knew Rita was obviously in the band, and I knew that she was the mother of some of his children, but I did not know the depths of their relationship. That was new. And it wasn't until I read her book and met her in person and had some conversations about just how vital she was. And I remember the same thing happened on King Richard. I remember flying to Florida. I had to fly to Florida for both Oracene Price and for and for Rita Marley. They both live not too far from each other. And when I sat with it, it just dawned on me like she saw everything that Bob saw. She was in the band. Her perspective is so important. And it felt remiss to not have that in the script. Like it was a missed opportunity, not only for her character, but for Bob's character.
Yeah.
It gave a spine to their story. There's an unconventional love story, and it just became crystal clear that we have to lean into this. I mean, there's no movie without Rita, actually, because everything else is hearsay. Everyone else is someone else's opinion. It's someone else's story. Rita was there. She was in the room. She saw it happen. And there's very few people you could say that. Neville Garrick was alive, thankfully for us. He was a consultant on the room, so I knew he was in some of those spaces. But outside of that, there were very few people that are alive that were in those spaces that we were depicting. And it just was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity to tell her story, which only enriched Bob's story. And yeah, honor their legacy together. We screened the film, we premiered the film in Jamaica, and Rita Marley was in the audience, and it was the most powerful screening I think I've ever been a part of. To hear her
Love it.
weeping, and I mean, it was painful, man. It was like, wow, look at the love that another human being has for someone else. It just felt like it was just your heart was swelling. It was unbelievable. To see that, experience that, witness that, be a part of it. So yeah, I'm really grateful for Rita and her participation in the film.
Now, just to wrap this up, I mean, obviously, as iconic as Bob is, this film really is introducing his music and his legacy to new generations. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, as for you as a filmmaker and a storyteller, this feels like it might be one that's going to be a little harder to let go because there's sort of extra weight to it, as opposed to just sort of the idea of the work behind it. It feels like there's like the legacy of it is something that is going to be one that you're going to have to bear for a while. Like, would that be true?
Yeah, look, I've got two kids. I love them both equally. They're all my children. That's how I would say. There are some more difficult than others, but that doesn't make them, any more important, any more or less important. I think Bob was the most important thing in my life as we were making that film, and he will remain that way forever. I was trying to explain it to somebody. Making a film is like, sorry, I have unfortunately I did not put this focus on. Let me do that. It's like I don't know what it's like to obviously carry a child, but I would say it's like carrying a child, and then the second you have that child, sending it to college. Um, you don't get to hang out with that child. That child is no, like you don't get to raise it. It just flies, you know. So
Right.
it's a strange experience. You carry it, you want to keep it safe, you want to protect it, you want to love it, you want to do everything you can, like eat the right diet and do the whole thing, and then it's gone, and then it doesn't call home, and then it's not yours anymore. And that's the experience. That's the experience. So it's a yeah, it's sad and lonely, but it's also beautiful and it's life. That's what
Yeah,
life is.
sure. But I mean, Ronaldo, man, just again, thank you so much for the time. I mean, I've been a fan since Monsters and Men, and I mean, I'm really excited for more and more people to see this movie.
Thank
Seriously. But again, just congrats on the work, and thank you so much for the time today.
thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.